my child always seems to have something in their mouth, whether it's their shirt or their fingers or a pencil. What can I do to stop it? Hi, my name is Holly. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist. I have a passion for simplifying early childhood development so we as toddler mamas can enjoy more free and colourful play. Today we are talking with Heather Greutman about oral fixation. You know, that thing where they put everything in their mouths? Now, if you want to learn more about toddler development as a whole, don't forget to click on the link in my description box and you will receive my free toddler development milestone charts for 1 to 4-year-olds. Today I'm talking with Heather Greutman about sensory oral fixation. Heather is a Certified Occupational Assistant with experience in school-based settings. She writes on growing hands-on kids, sharing child development tips, tools, and strategies. Heather, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you today about oral fixation and sensory processing.
Do you want to tell our audience just a little bit more about the work that you do? I know sensory is one of your topics.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I have a school-based experience. So I worked in the public school setting here in the United States. I worked with preschool age all the way through high school, though I will say those younger ages were my favorite. So preschool through early elementary or first or second grade is what I enjoyed working with. And I worked on a variety of things, fine motor, handwriting, visual motor skills, gross motor skills, sensory processing. It all goes together. And so you have to address kind of each area to see gains in those things related to school. So on my website, I write about all those topics. And then I've geared mostly towards toddlers, preschoolers, and now that my daughter is in second grade, I'm starting to write about older ages kind of as she grows up. So I'm hoping to have a good, well-rounded website with different age groups so that anybody can come on and get resources for all those different problem areas that you may be seeing in your educational resources and all kinds of things. So
yeah, I think that your website is such a good resource because sometimes we can get very opinion based on things that are development or experiential, or this was my child, this is how it should go. But to hear it actually from a therapist on this is the background of why this happens and this is the things that you can look out for is just so helpful. And we will also have all of Heather's links below so you can reach out and get in contact with her.
Nice. Awesome.
So Heather, today we're talking about oral fixation. Do you want to give our listeners just kind of an introduction on what that really means? And wait, before we do that, I'll just say that the reason that we decided to talk on this topic is I had a question come in about a 3-year-old little boy that was chewing his shirt all the time. And there might be several different reasons why this could happen, but I thought that oral fixation was definitely one of those areas that we should cover in answering that question.
Yes, definitely. And that age that you said 3 is kind of when you start to notice if there are a type of oral fixations, because developmentally we expect children to kind of mouth things in that 18-month to 24-month age group. That's typical. And so especially while a toddler is teething or they just explore with their mouths. So you'll notice, little babies, they'll pick something up, immediately goes in the mouth. So when children get older, especially when they go to preschool and start putting things in their mouths all the time, that's kind of when you start to notice, is this turning into something a little more than just exploring? Is there something else going on underneath? Is there a sensory processing component that we need to look at? Maybe it's anxiety related. There's as you said, there's lots of different reasons. But yeah, when they get to that 3-year-old range or older and they're chewing on things like a shirt or crayons or something in the classroom that isn't necessarily something they should be chewing on, that's when we really want to step in and kind of figure out, okay, what's going on here and how can we help and provide safe alternatives to help address whatever is going on underneath.
Yeah, definitely. And I really love that you just pointed that out, that it is before 2, we really do expect it. And sometimes I know one of my kids was probably very
like in the middle of the range of how much they
Mm-hmm.
mouth, and my other child was like right at the end of the spectrum, like everything went to the
Yes.
mouth. And if your first child is that like end of spectrum, even before 2, you can start thinking, this is too much, like surely this isn't normal. But they're doing it, but
Right.
it is
Right.
developmentally normal at that age.
Yes. Of course, if they're trying to mouth something that they shouldn't be, then you want to step in. But yeah, it is definitely something that you're going to see with a toddler, and that's okay. Like, that's how they explore. But yeah, if it's turning into kind of like a self-harm thing where they're biting themselves and, causing physical harm to themselves, or you may hear of, a child biting another child in the classroom. That's kind of when you want to start looking at, okay, what's going on underneath? Is this purely a behavior thing? Is there the sensory component? What is going on that we can address? And with my daughter, she was my first, and she bites her nails. Her mouths or hands are constantly in her mouth. And, with everything going on right now, we definitely don't want hands in the mouth all the time after touching different surfaces. And so some of that, is just part of being a kid. They're going to do that. But yeah, then you want to look at, okay, what are some things that I can provide and do that can be a safe alternative? And all kids are going to have different type of sensory kind of things that they seek after. Like in my daughter's case, she bites her nails all the time. She's very active, and so we always have to make sure she's getting enough, exercise and input so that she's not bouncing off the walls, as you would say. So all kids are going to have their little preferences or things that they're seeking after. And so when it becomes something that they literally can't function until they find that thing, they can't focus, they can't attend to something until they get that input that they need, that's when we need to look at it and say, okay, what can I be providing or doing throughout the day to kind of help them self-regulate so that they're able to participate in school or different activities or self-care or things like that.
Yeah. How do you think, like for you, how do you draw the distinction between, say, a fixation and a sensory processing disorder?
Yeah, so that one can be a little tricky because, yeah, at least here in the United States, sensory processing disorder is not necessarily something you get diagnosed with. Because it's not considered an actual diagnosis. It's more something of just a label if you were to go see an occupational therapist for sensory processing. Depending on what type of assessments they do or scores the child gets, they may be labeled with sensory processing disorder purely for the therapist to understand how to treat. And there are definitely, protocols and different, sensory strategies that go along with that a therapist can help with. And then, yeah, an oral fixation is part of that, but with sensory processing disorder, you may see other things, other sensory challenges other than just oral fixation. If oral fixation is the only thing you're really noticing, that's obviously still something you can address. It may not necessarily be a sensory processing disorder thing. It may just be that's the only thing they're dealing with. And that's still something you can address, with different sensory strategies. But with sensory processing disorder, I would say there's probably more things going on than just oral. And even with an oral fixation, you're still going to use other sensory systems to help with that oral fixation, because it can be a tactile thing because you have, the sensors in your mouth. It could be a tactile input that they're looking for. It could be a taste thing. It could be proprioception, which is input through the muscles and joints. So they're craving that input in the jaw, and so that's why they're constantly biting down on things. So it could be a number of reasons, and it kind of takes some detective work to figure out, what could be causing that. And then if you have questions, talk to an occupational therapist, because regardless of it being sensory processing disorder or not, they can still give you strategies and tools to help. Especially if you're noticing, like, the chewing on clothing all the time, or putting holes in clothing. Chewing on pencils is another, noticeable one that you see a lot. Just things like that.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, from your experience with working with fixation, how much of it, like, there's obviously a sensory component within it, but how much of it is also, do you think, habit-based? Or, like, is there a way that that a parent could kind of point out, oh, this is just something that he's, like, drawn to, like bubblegum?
I actually kind of have a personal experience with this, because I do have a very bad oral fixation habit of chewing the inside of my cheeks.
Oh, yes.
And it started when I got braces as a teenager, and the braces would cut up the inside of my mouth. And so it was constant. I was always trying, to get those little, pieces out of there. And it's probably TMI, but ever since then, I've always chewed the inside of my cheeks or lips. And then I noticed, and it's like, I don't even notice I'm doing it a lot of the time until if I watch a video of myself that someone's taken, I'm like, oh, I was chewing on my lips and I did, or my cheek, and I didn't even notice it. And then it really struck me when I saw my son doing it. And I was like, oh, I'm probably doing this a lot more than I think I am, because if he's noticed me doing it and is now doing it, thinking it's, well, I guess it would be something, I don't know, abnormal or normal, I don't know. But so yeah, I think it really boils down to how it's affecting their everyday life. Because, like, in my case, it's a bad habit, but it's not really affecting how I'm participating in everyday life. So it's not affecting, socially, it's not affecting me, doing everyday life tasks. It's a bad habit. And so I think you want to look at it that way, is how is it affecting them being able to participate in community things? Is it affecting how they're participating in the classroom? Is it affecting how they're participating in, getting dressed or everyday life activities? And then you can kind of, pick apart, okay, what is going on under the surface? What can I address? And then again, if you have a lot of concerns, I would definitely talk to a professional. I'm always an advocate of that, because if it's always hard to give advice to a specific situation over the computer or over a video, because you're not there seeing what's going on. So I always advocate definitely getting an evaluation from a therapist that's there, that you can talk to, that they can look at the child and, kind of see how they're interacting, and can really help give you some pinpointed advice. And of course, there's, general things that you can do too. Like addressing just the tactile side of things, or the proprioceptive side of things. There's different activities you can definitely do for that at home too. But
I like this, because also the mouth is such a, it's a really important part of our calming mechanisms, right? Like, we use that sensory receptor to calm us. Like, even as adults, when we feel stressed, maybe you smoke, which is like big time using the mouth, or drinking like some hot or cold beverage. Like, again, it's really accessing your mouth, or chewing your cheeks, biting your lip, singing to yourself. Like, all of these things actually are really, and it's the same for a baby, really. When a baby is born, the first thing that they want to do to calm themselves is nurse, or suck a bottle, or pacify. And so that motion is very calming. So it definitely can come up a lot with kids, because there's so much in the world that can overwhelm them. And they need,
especially right now, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that a family is saying, okay, well, it seems like this is just a shirt issue. We're not seeing like across the board chewing things, or we're not seeing across the board any other sensory concerns. What
Right.
are some of the easy redirects that you would suggest?
Yeah, so one direct you could do is give them something alternative to chew on. So some type of chewable jewelry is what we call it here, but it's either a necklace or a bracelet or just something alternative that they can chew on, so that they're not chewing on their clothing and, you know, putting holes on it, or getting it wet, especially, you know, getting things stuck to it, that type of thing. Seeing if you can just, maybe they're bored, you can, you know, introduce a new activity and say, hey, let's try this, and get them doing something with their hands, so they're not constantly, you know, putting their shirt up to their mouth. So yeah, any type of tactile activity, sensory bins are a great one for this. Any type of fidget that they can use with their hands, just so that they're not focused so much on the shirt. Also, you can, you know, ask them, you know, is there something bothering you with your shirt? Maybe it's the fabric, maybe it's the type of material that it's made out of. Maybe you need to have them change into a different shirt, or ask them, you know, does this shirt feel scratchy? Does, you know, is there something else you can wear that would make you more comfortable? And so, yeah, just trying one of those ways first, and seeing if you can redirect through an activity. Maybe it's the clothing, and then just provide lots of ways for them to get input through their mouth throughout the day. So whether, if that's drinking out of a water bottle instead of a cup, so that they're drinking through a straw, so that they have to suck the water out, that's really great input for the mouth. Whether it's a crunchy snack with their meal, or something crunchy with their meal. And then, yeah, just providing lots of those choices throughout the day. Another one, both of my kids love chewing gum. So that's another thing that you could offer, you know, obviously you don't want to do that too much, because that can affect their teeth, but having it as an option for some days, and be like, hey, let's chew some gum instead of, you know, chewing on our shirt, or let's chew on the jewelry instead of chewing on our shirt. And so just having lots of different things that you can pull from, and something may work at first, and then it may not work later on. So that's why I like to suggest having lots of different things that you can pull from, in case one thing doesn't work and you can try something else.
I really like that. Yeah, because I mean, if a parent is coming forward and saying this isn't something that they think is like a major issue, but it is maybe leaving their shirt wet, and maybe they're feeling embarrassed about it, or getting holes in their clothes, that just to provide some kind of thing that then is socially acceptable, or won't be left wet, or like noticeable, like a straw bottle, or chewable jewelry, is such a great, like just a little thing that we can give our kid without them having to worry about this, getting that input in.
Yes, definitely.
Great. Well, Heather, I think that this has definitely answered this question, and it was really interesting to me to hear your perspective. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. It was great chatting with you.
Sure. Do you want to tell our audience where they can find you? And all those links will also be below.
Yes. So I write at Growing Hands on Kids. So if you just go to growinghandsonkids.com, that's my main site. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram mostly, in the same name, Growing Hands on Kids. So if you just search for me in the little search tab, it should come right up, and I'm on there. I try to be more active on Instagram, but I come and go. But there's lots of things over there. So even if there's not something new, you can still scroll back and see all the other things that I've posted. So, and the same with Facebook.
Great. Thank you so much, Heather.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great chatting with you today.
Bye.